Great. Great. Sorry, everybody, I'm unmuting and doing all the usual things. Welcome to the episode 20 of the Dr. Tech Show with myself, Pauline Roche, and Sweyn Hunter. And very sadly, as you will know, we can guarantee pretty much that our dear friend John Popham will not be joining us today. He unfortunately passed away last week, and we're very sorry about that. But we hope to continue John's great legacy in part by continuing with the Dr. Tech Show. Sweyn, would you like to say anything?
Yes, I mean, John is one of my best friends that I've never met in person, although I got to know him really quite well, I thought, over the years, the last 10 years or so, since he helped me with the original ideas for Island GovCamp in 2012, very characteristically. Since then, he really has been the inspiration behind anything I've ever done in online events and so on, and I think that's probably true of many other people as well. So much more to be said, but I think I'll probably just leave it at that at the moment.
And I was very glad to meet him. I was introduced to him by Paul Webster, another great online person. And he has just been at like so many events that I've been at and broadcasting and showing people how to do live streaming. And he came to one of the VCSS camps we ran in Barnsley, the third one. And he did a great Vine sending Sarah Baskerville birthday messages. So he was just so generous with his knowledge, and we will miss him, and we hope we will do him proud in future programs and today as well. So let's go with the usual goings, Sweyn, and say, how's the weather where you are?
The weather. It's 4 seasons in a day, as we say in Orkney, and that's very much so. We seem to be in late autumn at the moment, but it was summer earlier.
Yeah, similar in Birmingham. We have nice gold, kind of the autumn leaves are on the trees now, and you can see lovely colours out the window. And it's not raining at the moment, so we can just be glad of that and hopefully get a walk later. So today, as we were last month, we're still celebrating Black History Month, and this has been identified by many as the most important month in the 33 years of it this year, the most important month in the 33 years of its inception, that defines the social, cultural, economic and political progress that Britain's Black community has made. And we have something called the Youth Charter, which has fought for young people for 27 years to be given an opportunity to develop in life through sport, arts, culture and digital technology. And it's launched its Black History Wise education program, which is a year-round offer, not just a month, and can be embedded within mainstream cross-curricular learning. It also responds to Baroness Doreen Lawrence's tireless campaigning for Black history to be taught in every school, to ensure we give Black pupils and all pupils in society as a whole an insight and appreciation of the rights and responsibilities we should be afforded in this green and pleasant land. And that's from Jeff Thompson, who's the founder and chair of the London-based Youth Charter, which is the United Nations NGO. And I believe you've been celebrating Black History Month as well, Sweyn.
Yes, well, I'm a member of a local group which formed itself in response to the death of George Floyd, like so many other groups around the country and around the world. And we've all together been trying to work out what to do about Black History Month. And basically what we've decided was to do a social media celebration of people, Black people through history, whose achievements perhaps haven't been recognised as much as they might merit. We're going to take a different theme every week, every Sunday evening. And this week, yesterday evening, we were looking at musicians. So we were going to have 5 musicians, but we ended up having 10 because we had so much material. And most of the research was done by one of our members, Sorcha Kirker, and Tomas and I in our group have tried to assist her in the various channels, I suppose. Instagram, Twitter, and I did Facebook. And there's just a very quick example of one of our 10 posts from last night. I don't think it's best practice to have 10 posts, just bang, bang, bang. But by the time we got them all finished, that was all we could really do. So we'll be sharing them through the week as well, I hope. And here's one of the people who we're focused on, who's Thomas, so-called Blind Tom Wiggins, who was born in the middle of the 19th century and was a fabulously successful pianist. And so if you want to know more about that, have a look at the Orkney Oot Wi Racism page, and will be a link later, I'm sure. So I'll stop sharing that because there's lots of other things going on.
Yeah, there's no shortage of Black History Month events, and as we say, you know, it shouldn't be just a month; it should be all year round. And we look forward to hearing more about that.
I think one of the things about the whole rise in activism over the last little while, I mean, it was in response to terrible events in the United States, but it has kind of made some of these issues, brought them to the fore for the rest of the year as well, hopefully. So hopefully,
yeah. Well, I've been glad with the opportunity in my newsletter, Digital WM News, which this month is dedicated, the latest issue is dedicated to John Popham, to be able to profile in previous editions Black Lives Matters, and things about Black people and technology and digital and stuff like that. So it's great to be, you know, affording more channels than the usual.
Very much so.
Another event we're celebrating, National World event this week on the 10th of October is World Mental Health Day, and this is recognized by the World Health Organization every year on the 10th of October. And this theme this year is set by the World Federation for Mental Health, is Mental Health for All. And the UK organization Mind reminds us that mental health problems can affect anyone, any day of the year, but the 10th of October is a great day to show your support for better mental health and to start looking after your own well-being. And they've got a hashtag called Do One Thing to encourage people to share what they're doing for their own and other people's mental health on that day. And the third day we're celebrating is on the 11th, which is the International Day of the Girl. And on December 19th, 2011, the UN General Assembly adopted a resolution to declare this day as an International Day of the Girl Child to recognise girls' rights and the unique challenges girls face around the world. And the day focuses attention on the need to address the challenges girls face and to promote girls' empowerment and the fulfilment of their human rights. And one way to get involved is to participate in a youth-led digital activation, which is launching on International Day of the Girl, where young people across the world are developing a digital activism campaign aiming to raise the diversity of girls' voices and their vision for a reimagined future. And I know we've talked previously on this program, Sweyn, about girls and women in tech and digital inclusion, and I know we have some history there, and I think it's good to keep encouraging that.
Very much so. Yes, both of those days are really important. Both coming in the same week. So yes, International Day of the Girl Child looks like a very important cause indeed.
Okay, we are hoping to be joined by a guest on today's program, but we're not quite sure when she might be joining us. So we're going to carry on with the usual kind of stories that we have on the Dr. Tech Show, and the first one is one that you shared with us, Sweyn, about a new electrical waste collection in Orkney, aiming to collect 1,200 unwanted electricals and refurbish them.
Yes, indeed. I can't unfortunately share my screen at the moment for these links. So
I'll try and do that.
If you want to do that, then please do. Yes, it's we in Orkney, all 22,000 of us, we're encouraged to donate our unwanted electricals to support Restart Orkney, which is a local charity which both does training of young people in refurbishment and also sells the results as pre-owned furniture and so on. So they're launching. They're launching into the electricals segment now, and the campaign is aiming to collect 1,200, as you said, electrical appliances and devices, with a view to refurbishing at least 400 that will then be resold at low cost to local residents. Items that cannot be reused will be recycled. And the project will help to reduce electrical waste and provide 20 volunteer opportunities across the scheme, which will be set up in Aberdeen and Aberdeenshire also. I hadn't realised that bit. So it's been set up in response to new research commissioned by Material Focus, the new not-for-profit that recently launched the Recycle Your Electricals campaign. Research estimates that UK households are hoarding, wait for it, 527 million, yes, that's 527 million
Wow.
small electrical items, an average of nearly 20 per household. So electrical waste is now the world's fastest growing waste stream. Now, the majority of these can either be reused or the materials contained in them can be recycled, and they can be turned into literally everything from life-saving equipment to children's apparatus. So we are encouraged to find all our old phones, all our old toasters, all our old computers, all our old, anything that's smaller than the size of a dishwasher, I guess, microwaves, anything, and try and get them either resold and used by somebody rather than sitting in a cupboard, or put for proper recycling somewhere that's got the specialist facility to do that.
Excellent. That's a real inspiration for others to learn from, which we like to see on this show. That we share things that other people can also learn from.
Mm-hmm.
And the next story is about UNICEF Executive Director Henrietta Ford, who made some remarks at the Security Council meeting on universal connectivity and access to digital technology in conflict and post-conflict contexts. And UNICEF obviously has an international reach, but they're talking about closing the digital divide as a critical step to build peace, grow economies, and climb the development ladder, and to expand education for people as a way of doing that. And they've joined forces to launch GIGA, which is an ambitious global initiative to connect every school and its surrounding community to the internet. And they've got partners joining this scheme. So more than 30 member states apparently are now mapping out school connectivity, working through GIGA to create investment opportunities for blended public and private sector money to build the infrastructure needed to provide universal access to the internet. And again, something we've talked about on this show about universal access, that it's not just having the devices that we need to encourage, but also the access to the internet and the skills that people need to
devices, data, and skills. It's kind of,
yes.
I've turned it into kind of mantra. I'm always going on about that now.
Yeah, it's
to the point where I'm having to start to explain what it means occasionally.
Well, I think we shouldn't have to, but it's if we have to. And,
it's moving the focus away, isn't it, from moving the focus away from purely on the devices,
yes,
also to the affordability and the availability of connectivity, whether that's a phone signal or broadband, and then moving on from that, even because there's quite a lot of focus been on that historically. But the thing that's always, I think, been missing is the longer term support and help and skills development of people who are new to the internet, whether that's because they're very young or because they just haven't used it yet. In this case,
and of course the data poverty, which we've also referred to here, and we've seen some countries are starting to address that more, and we are, I think, hopefully in our own way, going to be encouraging the bigger organizations that have lots of data to be able to think about how they can maybe share it out a bit more fairly, because surely it's in their interest to get people to be using the facilities that they're providing. So hopefully they will be encouraged to do some more of that.
I think lockdown has let some people find motivations for using online stuff more than maybe they had before lockdown, but equally it's made it more challenging for those who have who don't have a device or can't afford data. It's made it more challenging for them to actually achieve it. So the motivation's there, and it's good to see initiatives like this getting going to try and make sure that we can actually find and help and connect as many people as we can.
Sure. Okay, we move on to our next story, which is called 5 Things I Use My Phone, which is an iPhone XR for on a daily basis. And this is a story written by a blind person who was talking about a picture that was shared recently of a visually impaired person who, this is a story from last year, but anyway, it's still relevant. A visually impaired person, using her phone on a train was shared on social media with comments about how she can't be visually impaired if she can use a phone. Well, obviously that's a fallacy. And so this person has gone on to say what things they can use their phone for. So let me just share the screen to show the items. So the first thing the person uses their phone, Luke, the guy's name is, uses his phone to see things. So basically, a phone can be used to hover over objects, text, barcodes, and handwriting, whether the light is on or off, and they can be use character recognition to read out what's on the screen. And there are other apps, tap see or digitize. The person Luke talks about apps that can help people to see things. So that sounds like a brilliant use of a phone for all, many of us. And I'm sure I'm not the only one who regularly turns to my phone for the torch as a thing that's handy to use, because it's not just a phone anymore, it's a device, isn't it, that we
It was funny.
have.
I had to seek advice from an electrician last week, and we had to get into an awkward little corner underneath one of it's kind of an underground shed. We both opened the door of the shed, and we both simultaneously simply reached for our phones to find the torch. And it occurred to me that 10 years ago that would have seemed a completely ridiculous thing to do. But there we are. Even the electrician wasn't using a torch; he was using his phone.
And I remember on the previous device I had to download the Torch app, whereas now it's become, obviously everybody expects it, so it's one of those built-in things. We got new Samsung phones recently, and it's built in. You just learn to expect it. So the second thing that Luke said that he uses his phone for is finding places, and these I don't know we've talked that much about this on this program, but GPS apps are great, and Google Maps he uses, which he thinks is better than the Apple one. So there's an interesting discussion. We've had a discussion about Apple on the program before. He also uses Microsoft Soundscape, as it tells him when he passes key points in his journey, like bus stops and roads. And that sounds like a really useful thing to do, because often you're on a journey and you don't, if the area is new to you, you're not going to know how many stops are before your stop, and what other key places of interest might be out there. So that sounds like a really useful thing to use your phone for. The third thing he uses it for is checking social media. Very popular topic on this program. And he reminds us that it allows us to interact with people, find out news, get recommendations, and post pictures and videos of our day. Luke uses Twitter, as so many of us do, and he emphasizes that it's good because it has things like enlarged text and image descriptions. And I was talking to somebody else on Facebook about this yesterday, about using the alt description thing, whether you say the person is a black person or a white person or an Asian person. And I think it's useful to say, because we need to know images and what, to bring it to our consciousness as well, how many more images we have of white people than others maybe. And Luke loves to see what people are up to through Instagram stories, and with the addition of photo descriptions, for him, this was last year, it's starting to become a little bit more accessible. And I think that's just developed over the last year. I'm not a huge Instagram user myself. Sweyn, are you into Instagram in any way, or is it one of those things that you have but don't use?
I'm a words person.
Yeah.
I can't get into Instagram. We were joking about this over the weekend as we did our musicians. I said I would do any channel except Instagram. I do have an account that's got one picture, and so I can look at other things, but no, I'm not an Instagrammer. Maybe one day.
Well, if Helen does join us, maybe she can give us some tips, because she's a top social media user, and we certainly benefit from that. Okay, the next number 4 on Luke's list of 5 is capturing things, and he likes to capture things, whether it's photos to post on Instagram or video clips to turn into a vlog, and he uses the inbuilt camera app. So that's handy because most of us do have a camera app and video usage on our phones now, and the voiceover on his iPhone obviously tells him where the shutter button is and where your face is on the screen. And I think I would find that of use. I never find my arm is long enough and taking those selfies. Similarly with my family, my mom took her first selfie when I was home recently. And that was nice. And it was just a matter of focusing. You know, you take these things for granted, but holding your arm out long enough, you know, is your camera facing in the right direction, that sort of thing. We do take them for granted, and they're not always as easy as we think they are. And the last thing on the list then is listening to things. Luke apparently gets bored really easily, traveling on a plane or a bus. So having music or a book to read is important. So he uses the inbuilt music app, or Amazon Music or Spotify he refers to. I've also heard the one called Bandcamp. I don't know if you know this one, Sweyn, but it's musicians that I know are encouraging people to use Bandcamp as a definite alternative to Spotify. Because the money actually goes to the musicians rather than
that's right. They have some days that all the money that you spend goes directly to musician, and it's a lot more cost effective for musicians to put their music there than on Spotify, certainly.
Yeah, so I think John would approve if we encourage people to use Bandcamp. He also recommends Luke also recommends Audible or Dolphin Easy Reader for books. And yeah, they are available. And there's also, of course, all the books that are available to public libraries, ebooks, which I'm sure have been, you know, vastly used since COVID-19 started and the impact of that. So yeah, I'd like to encourage more people to use ebooks if they're borrowing books from libraries. So that was the story of what this person uses their phone for. I think we could compile an even longer list of what you use our phone for now. Don't they say, Sweyn, that there's more technology now in a smartphone than was used to send the first people to the moon?
I think that's been true for a while. I think you don't have to have a very new phone for that to be the case. I think it was something like, no, I'm not going to guess, but I think that's been true for a few years. I think there was more processing power in some sort of 80s era calculators than there was actually aboard the moon missions, but that may be an urban myth. I haven't checked that.
Okay. Well, moving on, we have our next story, which is about reminding us that digital inclusion is vital during the COVID-19 accelerated channel shift.
I can let you know, Pauline, that I have sorted the problem about sharing the screen, so I can do that for you while you
speak. Brilliant. Okay. So this is a story from publictechnology.net, and it's a story from September, but I think it's still relevant. As of 23rd September, all the public bodies are expected to conform to Web Content Accessibility Guidelines 2.1. We were looking for this reference in a previous show. That's WCAG 2.1. And according to a Society of Internet, SOCITIM, that's Society of Internet Technology Managers?
No, Society of IT Management. It's a local authority.
Sorry. Yeah,
it's a group of local authority IT people and digital people.
So according to a recent report from them, 57.95% of council websites currently fail to include a skip to content navigation option, for example. And this can force visually impaired people using screen readers to interpret text and imagery to tab through tens or hundreds of navigational links before reaching the main content. Well, basically, certainly jumping off our previous story, doesn't seem like a fair thing for people to have to do. And then
it's a huge issue. There's new regulations that have just come in, and I think that should it should have improved things by now, but I'm sure that those authorities who haven't yet brought themselves into compliance with that will be trying quite quickly to do so, and I think that will improve at least the local authority side.
Excellent, good to hear. And just for people wondering how many people use screen readers, 29% apparently, a gov.uk survey showed 29% of respondents use screen readers. So obviously it's got a huge impact. And generally for accessibility issues on local government sites, navigation accounted for 3 of the top 5 accessibility issues. So, you know, it's not a good thing to hear. And I'm sure our colleagues in the public sector are working on that. Is it something that comes up with your line, Sweyn?
Yes, all the time. I mean, we take it quite seriously. I'm sure there's a lot more that we can do in our own organisation, but yes, it's something that's very much at the front of everyone's attention when content is produced to go on the website.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and our next story is one I think that John would definitely have related to, because he was involved during his life in work on vehicles that brought digital on vehicles and kind of structures. I think they brought digital to communities rather than making communities have to come to them. And I've done that in my own career. I have to say, my first paid job in Ireland, when we were trying to show people that the work that we were doing to transfer abstracts of documents to microfiche to show what it looked like, because a lot of people didn't know it looked. We brought the fiche to the people in the street in Galway to show them, rather than making them have to come out to our factory. So yeah, I believe in bringing the technology to the people. So this next story is about Huawei, who have a thing called Digitruck to bridge the digital divide and reduce rural inequality. Obviously, I mean, a great line in this first story is the big risk of the excitement around the digital economy and the opportunities it creates is that we end up concentrating on improving the lives of people who are already digitally connected. And I know John would have been especially conscious of this. So we're very pleased to hear about this Huawei initiative known as the Digitruck project, and it's in Kenya. And it's driving their latest digital inclusion initiative, Tech for All, and it's designed to increase the awareness and accessibility of digital skills by delivering these solutions to remote communities through mobile digital classrooms converted from truck containers. And through these strategies, Huawei is seeking to provide education for vulnerable groups in remote areas, and it has showcased the success of its first truck in a classroom called the Digitruck in Kenya. And it's a mobile multifunctional IT lab fit in a 40-foot container on wheels, and it'll be able to reach the most remote areas in Africa that do not have access to electricity thanks to solar energy. And the flexibility in design and functionality of the truck enables it to be used as a mobile health center, hold community training, double as a cyber cafe and an IT classroom. And it has the capability, Sweyn, would you believe this, to run 100% off solar power or be connected to the grid. And also it's completely secure. So it's
well, that's great
wonderful
to hear. I mean, there's no technical reason these days why that shouldn't be the case, and it's great to see our project actually doing that. And obviously, in that environment, it would be essential. There used to be in Scotland a thing we used to call the broadband bus, which was owned by Fife College. And in the olden days of before broadband was generally available to everyone, Highlands and Islands Enterprise hired this bus to go all over the Highlands and Islands. It was basically a classroom on a bus. And this bus went around all over the place giving advice on how to get broadband and what to do with it when you got it. It seems like ancient history nowadays, but it's a similar sort of thing. And as you say, go to where the people are.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think doing the coverage for Digital WM News of John's passing, I was able to see a whole selection of work that he'd done, including with Lloyd Davis, where he'd been on vehicles and structures that had brought the thing to where the people were. So it was
one of the great unfunded projects that John thought of was to come to Island Gov Camp in a camper van and book himself to do digital surgeries, as we call them now, in various places on the way from Huddersfield to the very far north of Scotland. Unfortunately, for a combination of reasons, partly that he didn't get funding to do it, and partly that he got other work on the same weekend, which was going to pay him, which is obviously very important. That didn't happen, but I love to think of that project. I think I might have been tempted to go and meet it halfway and travel up with them.
That was wonderful. Yeah,
Could have been Lloyd. Could have been one of the ones that's involved in that. I can't remember now.
Yeah, it reminds me of with Comms Camp. Bridget Ahern was talking about doing Comms Camp, the one we did, the stay home one that you were involved with, from her camper van, wasn't she?
Oh, so that's right. Yes.
It's a popular thing to think about, and of course, Julia Higginbottom and Nat Higginbottom are doing a lot of broadcasting and connecting digitally from their camper van. Would you call it a camper van? A mobile home?
I think so. It's a mobile home, yeah.
Yeah, in the Great Burner. So always good to hear about those kind of stories where people kind of, they're not off grid, but they're changing the grid, aren't they?
That's right.
To suit their situation. Yeah. So that's a great story, Digitruck. I'd love to see that. So if Huawei want to sponsor or bring us to see it or whatever, that sounds.
We'd have one for Ireland. We could go over to Ireland with a truck, surely.
Yeah, absolutely.
Done it in the Highlands with a bus. Can do it in Ireland with a truck.
So our next story is from DigiLeaders, which is a network of digital leaders around the country, and they've got their Digital Leaders Week coming up. But they produced an article recently talking about how digital disparity is leaving millions behind, and just reminding us of some of the initiatives that took place and the potential kind of not negative, but some people weren't able to take advantage of them. So, for example, the Eat Out to Help Out scheme, which I didn't take part in, but I know lots of other people did. 23% of adults cannot fill out forms and book tables online, so they were left out of that. The Track and Trace app, 6.5 million adults cannot use apps to access key tracking tools. As regards video NHS consultation, 25% can't use video conferencing and telehealth. And for universal credit, 29% of people receiving benefits have low digital capability and will need support. So that's only 4 digital initiatives that lots of people in this country would not or have not been able to use because they just don't have the skills or facilities that the government assumes are available to all.
This is where the digital divide is now. The digital divide is much less about who has a connection to the internet, which is the proportion of people who don't have that is going down all the time. It's having, as we say, the device, the adequate data, and also the skills to actually take advantage of this sort of thing. And if you can't do it, you can't do it. So it all shows the importance of getting the action that we take on that right.
Yeah, it's a thing to think about, and yeah, I think we just need to keep reminding ourselves, these things happen, and these things are reality for some people.
Okay, well, I can say that Helen is about to join us, so
okay.
We'll do that. We'll pause our coverage of those other stories, and we'll bring Helen in, and she'll not know. Well, she will realise she's going live because she's done this sort of thing before. Here goes.
Yeah.
Hello, Helen, and welcome to episode 20 of the Dr. Tech Show, which we are broadcasting live to YouTube. I have to say that just in case you're not aware. I'm sure you are. How are you?
Very good, thanks. How are you?
Very well. Good. We always ask what the weather's like where you are, just to make sure that we can chat about something for a minute or two.
South Wales, and it's just about to tip down, I reckon. It's kind of, the air feels wet.
What, rain in Wales? No.
Who would have guessed?
Surprising.
So it's very good of you to join us, Helen, in the kind of difficult first episode of Dr. Tech after John Popham passed away. We've done a little bit of remembering of things that he's done and what he's meant to us. So I wonder if you'd like to just share any thoughts you have on that, just in general.
Yeah, I mean, I could talk all day about John, but yeah, thank you very much for asking me on. It's a real honour, and I love this show, and it's lovely to come and talk about John on it on my first time here. Well, I mean, I've been thinking about the things that we can learn from John, really, in the way that he was incredibly positive about lots of things, and also brought quite a bit of fun to work. And I was thinking about the first time I properly met him in real life. And I can't remember the name of the conference, but it was a conference in Liverpool. I knew him from Twitter before, and I think he said at the end of his session, we were both talking at this conference, and he said, let's go for a walk through Liverpool and, you know, see how that goes from a social thing. So we all went for a walk. He obviously filmed loads of it. And we went to the pub, and the kind of the first thing I knew where I reckon we're going to be friends for a good long time, when we both looked at the pump and the guest ale was called Cock. We both instantly went, we've got to get a pint of Cock. That is, you know, the way that it's just like, I'm drawn to people who are in touch with their silly side, and we were both having a good chuckle about that for many, many years after. It became like a thing that you'd tweet each other and just kind of talk about it. So I think I always loved that he brought a bit of fun and was able to enjoy himself whilst also doing really important work. And
absolutely, very serious in some ways, and yet in a fun way.
Absolutely, like doing work that makes a difference to people's lives doesn't have to mean that you don't enjoy yourself at the same time. And I think that's something that I really learned from him. You know, I've taken that into a lot of the work that I've done as well, where actually you're more creative when you're enjoying yourself, and you do better things and can make a bigger impact on people if they feel, you know, the way that like Twicket and the way that he'd bring cricket into his conversations with people to tell them like, oh, actually you can watch the cricket on YouTube. It's not just the telly that you can do this on. And the way that he kind of always brought in people's real lives into a way of convincing them and finding tech approachable. I think that's what I loved about him.
We were literally just saying as you arrived that one of the things we're talking about was a brilliant example of going to where the people were, and John was an absolute master of that skill. I think he not only geographically but in his mind as well. He could see things from the perspective of the people he was working with, and that is a very difficult thing to do sometimes. But I think it's one of his great skills actually was that.
It's such a talent to have. And again, like we teach, because you know I do similar work to that John did in that I teach people to use social media, and one of the things we'll always say is you've got to have obsessive radical empathy. Like the best way to get into people's heads and talk to them and have meaningful conversations is to really be obsessed with how they feel, rather than
write that down. Excessive radical empathy.
That's brilliant. Yeah.
Well, yeah, I think he just naturally had that. He just knew that's the way to get people to be able to engage in anything, really, is to try and see it from their point of view.
We are on literally in the back of an envelope.
I've been quoted on the envelope. Delighted.
Excellent.
Oh dear.
Yeah.
I'm interested, can you remember your first encounters with John? Like first impressions, maybe?
Yes, I mean, as I said earlier, I never actually met him in person, although I had lots of video conversations with him and dozens of Facebook chats and Twitter chats and so on. But yeah, I mean, it was just as a completely helpful person in a lot of things that I was interested in trying to get going. You know, back maybe almost 10 years ago, not quite. Living what I do, I'm always keen for people to live stream things, and I think one of the times I came most early into contact with him was when he was live streaming Blue Light Camp. I think that would have been in 2012, it might have been 2011, but anyway, it was only a few weeks before Island Girl Camp, and I was quite keen to just basically see any tips and tricks and so on and so on. So yeah, just tremendously generous with getting things online and sharing things really from wherever you happen to be, even a stupid Scottish island, or Wales, or Ireland.
We're representing everyone here.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was introduced to him by Paul Webster, and he was just larger than life, I think, in a great way. You know, he always wore black. He always had you know, long hair, sunglasses often. You know, real presence in the room, but not obtrusive. You know, just sort of a very kind of assertive and staunch advocate of anybody who wants to learn something. So, like for example, in Barnsley at VCS camp, he helped somebody just sort out something simple, really, much like you have done with me, Helen, at Comms Camp. You know, sometimes there's a simple solution to things, and you're struggling over it, and then someone else comes along, and he wasn't big-headed or, you know, I never saw him lording it over anybody. Or just sort of, you know, he was practical, and he was a little bit maybe, you know, you should know this, but in a way that was like criticizing the fact that people didn't, you know, weren't given the skills, you know, and it was like unfair, the unfairness.
Why have you
of
not
it,
been taught this?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have to credit John with another very important thing in the progress towards transparency and access to local democracy, which is when the council here in Orkney decided to take the least favourite option from the technical point of view, and decided not to do live streaming with something like Public Eye, or not to do something with just a camera, but they decided they wanted to audio live stream their meetings, not video.
Huh?
I was kind of almost in despair, to be perfectly honest, when that decision was made. It's no secret. But what I did was, the first thing I did was I sent a tweet to John to say, any ideas? How can you do audio live streaming? This is insane. Straight as quick as a flash, he had 3 options straight back. And the one that he recommended was Mixlr.com, which, although it was designed for DJs to present their sets to their remote and dispersed followings, you can also follow the Policy and Resources Committee of Orkney Islands Council every time it's on. So there we go. That's just typical of John, just having an absolutely ready solution, and it just absolutely was the right thing to use. It's really good.
He really did. He was nerdy about what he knew, you know, what he was passionate about. He knew everything about, didn't he? That was the really good thing. Like, I was thinking about, Pauline, your reaction to how he was at conferences, and I love the way that he was quite forthright in his opinions. Like, I loved that he always had an opinion on something that he was happy to share, and it wasn't always the same thing that you'd heard a million people say before. He always had quite a unique take. I didn't always agree with everything either, and he loved the ding dong. Like, he loved the, no, I think you're wrong because of that, and then like working it out. You know, I think that's much more interesting than most people who are just kind of trying to say the right thing, come up with the right ideas. He was kind of exploring what might be possible, and as a creative person, I love that kind of approach. Yeah,
and I often got DMs or PMs from him when there was a conversation going on online where he didn't want to get into you know, debate with somebody about the merits or demerits of something, but he'd just say, actually, Pauline, what I think is this, and you know, and then I would benefit from his knowledge without having to debate it with like multiple other people who had different views.
Yeah.
So maybe we should resume our list of stories. By all means, stay with us and comment, Helen, on these things that come up. We try to pretend that we've prepared all this and planned it, which of course Pauline has. But sometimes these things can seem like, oh, that's a good idea, as I see them for the first time when I should have read them beforehand. But the next one is something to do with emergency powers adopted, I think, in England, to require schools to teach online.
Yeah, I'll have to get to that one now. Have you got that one up, Sweyn?
I do.
Okay, because I'm. Let me see.
Sorry, I should have given you more warning.
It's like.
I'll just start reading out what we've got.
Yeah.
The guidance is that I'm probably sharing the wrong thing now, but maybe not. The guidance is published on the Department for Education, which that is an England-only scope. on their website said, the direction means schools have a duty to provide education to children at home as they do when children are in the classroom. The General Secretary of the NAHT Head Teachers Union, Paul Whiteman, said there was no need to reach for legal powers as there was every indication that schools have taken their preparations for partial or full closure seriously. Head teachers unions have advised the DFE strongly against using such emergency powers, adding that they've been working flat out for months to support children's education. And although I'm in Scotland, I can say that that's true from a personal experience, both from my work with the local authority, which runs all the schools in our area, and also because my partner in life is a deputy head teacher of one of the bigger schools in Orkney, and they have been working their socks off to make sure that people are contacted, have devices, have data, all the things we've talked about before. So the National Education Union, formerly the NUT, the General Secretary, Mary Bousted said, staff in schools are desperate to do their best for pupils, and the pandemic makes their roles all the more important. The legal requirement to provide remote education must be backed by government support for what is, by some distance, not business as usual. And I think that's just, I mean, it's good that someone is saying that out loud, because I think it's so obvious and so important. And she claimed that a support package announced alongside the guidance promising 100,000 laptops fell short by a long way. And she said that the government was once again trying to cut corners over COVID. Schools are crying out for the right support for online learning throughout lockdown, not least for disadvantaged young people who did not have the right IT or Wi-Fi equipment at home. And that would have ensured a continuity and parity of learning.
And then I, in response to this story, Chris Ashworth, who was on our program last week about the Reboot project, pointed out on Twitter that 20% of children on pupil premium have access to a device and connectivity, but schools don't have the budget. No, only 20% of children on pupil premium, and emergency instructions don't fix that. And he, you know, he kind of, he obviously says that there's 100,000 additional laptops from DFE is great, but as the digital inclusion community is saying, the scale of the problem in households has doubled since COVID, just on devices alone, and that, you know, data poverty is very real right now. And we've talked about this earlier on this show. And Helen, I'm sure you're aware of this as well. You know, people may have devices, maybe even have connectivity, but may not be able to afford the data. And it's something we've drawn attention to. And we're hoping to continue until it's addressed as a real issue. So that was that story, and there was one about from the One Digital program, which was about their Digital Champion program, has now come to an end, and this was a UK-wide digital inclusion program developed by a collaborative partnership between Aged UK, Citizens Online, Clarion Futures, which was part of the Clarion Housing Group, Digital Unite, and the Scottish Council of Voluntary Organisations. And this ran until this year, funded by the National Lottery Community Fund, to deliver digital skills training through digital champions and to share learning and best practice.
I don't have this story on my list, I'm sorry.
Okay, I think it's above the one that you were just looking at.
Okay,
But I'll if I share my screen.
Oh no, I've got it. Yeah.
Shall I open my screen?
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, okay. So the network has engaged over 3,900 organizations, recruited over 4,700 digital champions, and supported over 61,000 people to learn new digital skills, which is a great feat. And their model has been, I think it's been copied elsewhere, or certainly been used elsewhere, offering personalized support and, you know, having a wide reach in communities, and the kind of thing you have to see happening in other places. Again, you know, the need for this thing isn't over, is it? You know, and I think the need for everybody to see themselves as a digital champion would be great if everyone modeled themselves on that, and seeing, you know, how many people have we taught, kind of formally or informally, how to use a piece of kit, and it's made all the difference, you know, some difference in their lives anyway.
As we've said countless times before, that's very much the model that's been adopted by the Connecting Scotland project. I think there's a similar one in Wales, Helen, and also the Devices.now project in England. this concept of digital champion to go along with the devices and the help to access data is quite important.
Yeah, I mean, I know in my experience of helping, I've worked in local authorities as well, and it feels like sometimes it's like teaching someone to read, in that you're better off giving them a good story than telling them books are great, here are some books, just some random books that I got for you. And like that, sometimes I think with the digital champion thing, you don't want to tell someone they're a digital champion. Like you can, it works for some people, but a lot of the time it's easier if you just say to someone, oh right, you're a big Elvis Costello fan, did you know that you can join this fan club on Facebook? Or, oh right, you have, I don't know, you have arthritis, there's an amazing Twitter community that you can chat to here. And it's kind of giving them the reason for why they want to do it, rather than just digital for its own sake. Because I think people self-identify as a dinosaur or analog person, and they think, I like people, so I don't want to do online stuff because I like conversations. And if you show them that conversations do happen, that's it's starting with the outcome rather than the way you get there. It can be really helpful.
Absolutely, couldn't agree more. Okay, so and we are actually arriving at our final story, which I'm very pleased to say is a few words about John Popham, written by Paul Taylor from Bromford. And this was John and Bromford that go back, had a long history. I don't know if are you getting this one up, Sweyn?
I can do. Sorry. And
Bromford, in 2011, Bromford was starting to use its social media, and they didn't really. Paul Taylor says they didn't know where to start. He'd been using Twitter for a couple of years in a personal capacity, but he didn't know whether it would add anything to the organization. And he came across John, who at that time apparently had about 2,500 followers. Obviously, John now has like 12 or 14,000. The characterization of John at the time, which I wouldn't say has changed all that much. A normal blog going on about dog walking, beer, trains, tech for social good, and the benefits of digital inclusion, which I think is John would be quite happy with that as a characterization. So Paul messaged
I'm sure there's
John,
something to add that's been missed out.
Well, I don't know. So John gave up his time for free for an hour to give advice to Paul, and he introduced him to the idea of digital storytelling, which again is something that Helen definitely relates to, giving everyday people who use digital tools a platform to tell their story, which is just what we kind of thing we've been talking about. Paul reminds us that John was years ahead of his time. He says most organizations are still fairly useless at storytelling or unsure of what their story even is. And, we'd like to think we can address that a bit. And he encouraged Paul to start blogging, first on behalf of Bromford and then personally. And he just told him to keep telling good stories and eventually people will follow. And in 2013, Paul started a crowdsourced Power Players poll to find the most socially connected and generous sharers on social media. He nearly topped it the following year, but narrowly beaten by Helen Reynolds. Hooray!
This wasn't rehearsed at all.
So it was just very nice to round off the stories about on this 20th episode 20 of the Dr. Tech Show, to have you here, Helen, and just reminisce about John. I know we could go on all day really talking about him, but he's certainly left his footprint, and we'll miss him.
Yeah,
certainly will.
Yeah.
So
that was a lovely blog post as well. I think Paul really captured him so well.
Yeah, that's really good. It's really good. And I think on that note, we can probably draw this week's program to a close. Thank you, Helen, for joining us.
It's been an absolute honor to be here. Thanks.
And as I demonstrate technical incompetence once again, trying to get us out of this show, we'll just remember John as he was and as we wish he could have been for a good while yet. I've got so many windows out now.
If you just smile, I'll try and get a photograph so we'll capture the... Thank you.
I think we'll just end the show there. We'll
Yeah.
not play the music.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you.